I want to talk this evening some about prayer. Prayer. I just want to read something that I have written here. There is so much to say about this medium of bringing self into submission to the will of God that we must purpose to confine ourselves, lest we write a book. The Bible knows nothing of a relationship with God apart from prayer. It simply does not. It simply does not. We are to meet the Lord in prayer. We are to pray without ceasing. Now, let me just really quickly run that, exactly what that means. Pray without ceasing. It is to live your life in the atmosphere of God's presence. It is to be in a continual communion with God. Now, someone says, well, how do you do that? Well, you're not born with it. There are some men who are more especially gifted in prayer after they are born again. But such a life of continuous prayer, it must be cultivated. And how is it cultivated? It is cultivated by separating time consistently to be with the Lord in Scriptures and prayer. And as you are with Him in that separated time, more and more as the years go by, pretty soon when you walk out of your prayer closet or you leave behind your quiet time, you don't walk out of your prayer closet and you don't leave behind your prayer time. It becomes a part of every moment of your life. There's a missionary. He's gone on to be with the Lord. He's quite famous. Maybe you've never heard of him. Frank Lombach. Frank Lombach. Now, he had a goal, and that was to teach everybody in the Philippines how to read. That was his goal. Every island of the Philippines to teach everybody how to read. Why? So that they could read the Scriptures. And he did it. You go to the Philippines right now and mention his name, and most people will know who you're talking about, even though he died many, many decades ago. Now, have you ever heard the statement, you're so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good? Well, you know what Frank Lombach's greatest goal in life was? Even though one of his great goals was to teach all the Philippines to read, his greatest goal, and you can see this in his diary, was to live one day without any interruptions in his thought life with regard to Christ. That his entire day, every waking moment, would be set upon Christ. Now, let's look at that statement, you're so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good. I can't think of anybody more heavenly minded, and he did something very practical. He taught an entire nation how to read. The statement, you're so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good, might be changed this way. You're so earthly minded, you're no heavenly good. We must be a people who, in a sense, practices the presence of God. Now, we have to be careful here because there's a way to super spiritualize this. I'll hear people say, well, you know, I really don't set aside time during the day to pray or anything like that. I just pray all day. I have yet to hear in history of one person who truly walked with God, who did not separate time daily to be with Him in prayer and in the Scriptures. Now, when we talk about a great home life, you can make some of this work, maybe in your own power. Maybe you're a very disciplined person, and so you can get up early in the morning, you can homeschool all your kids, you can work hard and bring home the bacon, you can stay up all night burning the midnight oil, taking care of your children and everything else. But without the presence of Christ, it'll be like a legalistic machine. There'll be no fragrance, there'll be no beauty, and there'll be no joy. There have been times when I have gone into believers' homes and seen it look like the whole family was under marching orders. I mean, the children were perfectly obedient. I mean, everything just going perfect. But there was a sense of death and of sorrow. Like everyone was a caged animal that when they were watched, they were doing exactly what they were told to do, but they wanted to break free from the bonds. And I've gone into families that were also very obedient, the children, the man and woman, very civil to one another, but there was the Spirit of Christ in that home. When you walked in, you could sense the joy that was there. You could sense the love that existed. For this reason, C.S. Lewis said maybe one of the greatest evidences of true Christianity is joy. For the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy. So there are certain things about the Christian life you simply can't fake. One time in Peru, my wife went out, she wanted to buy a plant or something. So she went to the market, just an open market where you can buy plants and everything. And she came home with this plant and had flowers on it, but it's quite unusual. I said, I've never really seen a plant like that before. It looks almost like it's two plants in one. The flowers just don't seem to go with everything else. And after a couple of days, she was watering it or something and then went over to it and kind of brushed up against one of the flowers and it fell off. There's something shiny on the tip of the flower. The guy had glued the flowers on. I mean, you talk about some guys who can rip you off. He had glued the flowers on the thing. It looked okay when it was whole. But as you looked at it, you said, there's just something not right. Something unnatural. There doesn't seem to be any life. It's just all fake. And that'll be the Christian life without prayer. It may look good. It may be disciplined. But the Spirit of Christ, the fragrance of Christ, will be missing. You can't fake it. You just can't fake it. Now, I want you to understand something. That prayer is foremost communion with God. Now, church, listen to me. Most people do not realize that, and if they do realize it, they don't practice it. Do you want to pray? What are we going to pray about? They'll ask you. Who's sick? Who has a need? Prayer automatically makes most people think of petition, 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 petition. That is wrong. What if someone that you dearly loved, a wife or a child, the only time they ever talked to you is when they had a need, and when they opened their mouth, it was always, I need this. That relationship wouldn't last very long. Wouldn't last very long at all. And yet most people and most collective bodies, most churches, when they think of prayer meetings, they think of petitions. When primarily prayer is communion with God. Now let me take a little side note here really quick. Most church prayer meetings are town hall meetings, and that's all. Because churches will get together on Wednesday and they turn into gossip sessions. You'll hear every bit of news going around town in that prayer meeting. Pray for so-and-so. I read in the newspaper he got a ticket. Pray for this person. Pray for that. Did you hear about this? And it'll go on for 20 minutes, and then a deacon or someone will stand up and pray for 5 minutes, and that's a prayer meeting. That's not a prayer meeting. As far as you can get from a prayer meeting. In my church back in Peru, we had a rule. On prayer night, we'd split people up according to the group they wanted to be in. No more than 3 or 4 people. And no one was allowed to share a prayer request. You prayed your prayer request. And other people heard you. And there was another rule. Don't bring a prayer request into the congregation that you yourself have not been burdened to pray for. How many times will people come into a prayer meeting, pray for so-and-so, and yet they've never done it? They just want to announce it. They want to talk about it. They want to make it known. That's not prayer. Some of you don't like prayer meetings, and rightfully so. You've never been to one. And when you come, you get bored to tears. But take heart, most of these things that are called prayer meetings aren't prayer meetings at all. But prayer is foremost communion with God. When in a prayer meeting did you just all get together and pray praises to God and fellowship with God? Speak about the great things of God. You know that the great missionary movement in Antioch, in chapter 13 of the book of Acts,